Just can't understand why anybody will wake up and say that we're killing people when we're actually not doing the same. And guess what? Where the Giwa barracks you were talking about, we have all the humanitarian agencies working there. You have the UN working, local and international organizations are working. Are we saying they are complicit? There is nothing we're doing in the back. So if they don't say it, which means Amnesty International is equal, and Amnesty is equally there. So which means they're equally accusing all these other organizations of being complicit.
So just to be clear, you would be prepared to go to the ICJ in The Hague and answer these accusations?
We're not scared of anything because we don't have anything of such.
We've seen Boko Haram regroup and regroup and regroup. What is your answer to that? That you have in some way fed the insurgents? The
problem is that I think we've talked to the international community. Let's find out the funding. When they started surrendering, by the time we left, so as we speak, we have over 120,000 that have surrendered. Most of them, when you find them, they are coming with hard currencies. How did they get them? How are they funded? How did they get the training? How did they get the equipment?
What is your suspicion?
Well, maybe an international conspiracy, you don't know. Who knows? How are they be able to sustain themselves for 15 years? That is one question I think everybody should ask himself. For Nigeria to be able to hold them, and you go to Nigeria, everything seems to be working well.
You must have an idea. I mean, let's not talk about international conspiracy theories. Let's give some hard facts.
Well, I just leave it at that. I'm sure they know, and I'm sure everybody knows that these are the challenges we're facing, that needs to be addressed. So the UN need to come in to ensure that, because we need to trace the funding. How are they sustaining themselves for 15 years?
What does the UN coming in mean? What does that look like?
Track the funding. It's international flow. We don't have control over that.
Whose interest is it to see Nigeria destabilized?
So did you hear him? Did you hear him? That over 120 Boko Haram repentants, 120, these are the same people that have been deployed to the Nigerian military. These are the same soldiers that have been sent to the southeast. Look at what happened in the village in Olo as of yesterday. Look at how these same soldiers came to a village and started shooting rapidly. But no Nigerian media will be able to carry this particular news. If you go on social media, every platform on social media, none of them, this particular news is not trending. This particular killing that is happening in Olo is not trending in any of this news. But what they are interested in is to fight the People's Army. What they are interested in is to talk bad about the image of the Biafrans and the Biafra land. So, if you are just joining us now, do well to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Believe me, a lot will be said in this particular broadcast. Look at Musa going to a worldwide interview, talking rapidly, without any brain, without any sense. Which international sponsorship, which international funding are you talking about? When Nigeria on itself is a terrorist state, who is funding the so-called Boko Haram you're talking about? Shetima, where is Shetima has a terrorist record. If Shetima can be investigated and brought to book, believe me, Shetima has a very, very big book of terrorism. Or is it, you can check all of them, you can trace all of them from A to Z. All of them claiming to be Northerners, claiming to be Muslims. Check all of them from A to Z. They are the ones causing these particular insecurities in Nigeria. They want to Islamize the whole country because they want Nigeria to be an Islamic state. That is why we, the Biafrans, are fighting so hard to make sure that we are liberated from this particular zoo. Because very soon the Nigerian state will sink. And we don't want to sink with them. That is why we keep defending our land. He is not talking about the killing that is happening in Southeast. None of these politicians have come out widely to talk about what is happening in Southeast. Their so-called president just visited of recent. No questions were thrown to him about why Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is still in detention till now, close to 4 years now without trial. Which country, which government will allow that? Because these so-called politicians, we are calling our brothers and sisters. They are the ones dealing with us. They are the ones betraying our movement. They are the ones destroying our movement. That is why we need to wake up. That is why we need to wake up and defend our land, so that very soon the Nigerian government will not have any other option than to sit down on a round table with us to discuss our freedom. Look at Musa talking rapidly, talking rubbish. You think Finland authorities can release Simon Ekpa to you like that? When Martin Nandekalo was in London, why didn't you guys go to the England authorities to release Martin Nandekalo for you guys? But you kidnapped him when he came to Kenya. That was when you guys kidnapped him. So, talking about Simon Ekpa, you are wasting your time. You can go to the highest media house in the world. What you are doing is you are giving us exposure. What you don't know, you are giving the Biafrans exposure, and you are making the whole world know what is actually happening in Biafra land. You are making the whole world read and understand that there have been a war. There have been a war that killed close to 3 million people. A war that lasted for 3 years, that killed close to 3 million people. So it can never be covered. So what you are doing is to open everything the Nigerian state have done to the Biafran nation. And believe me, when this particular thing gets to the ears of the top hands in the United States of America, believe me, you will see what will happen to you. Because we have redeclared and redeclared and redeclared. And we keep redeclaring. We have everything in common. We have a government now. We have soldiers on ground. We have angels on ground. So what is the problem? Believe me, you guys will be brought to shame. You are fighting everything possible because you know Simon Ekpa have dealt with your men. You know what Simon Ekpa did to the Nigerian military. He made the Nigerian military look like riffraffs. You are going for ward interview where your so-called barracks in the north have been attacked by Boko Haram and some bandits. Your so-called barracks in the north, most of your barracks in the north have been attacked by Boko Haram. Most of your soldiers in the north have been wasted by Boko Haram and these so-called terrorist groups that keeps emerging in the north. If you don't know, Biafra land is the safest place in Nigerian states. If you don't know, if you go to the north and see what is happening in the north, how these men are flying the Nigerian military, because Simon Ekpa made you guys look like rats in front of the nation. That is why you are fighting so hard to make sure that Simon Ekpa don't come back to social media again, or Simon Ekpa don't, because you are scared of him, because you know what Simon Ekpa can do. You government know what he can do. Simon Ekpa shake your Nigerian government. He made them realize that the Biafra agitation must be by force, and that is why they are scared. Now, I'll be playing more videos now. Just relax and listen to what I'm about to play now. The full interview of this Mugu talking about the Biafra movement and talking about the evidence he has against Simon Ekpa. Which evidence you have on X handle? The only evidence you have that Simon Ekpa is posting on X handle. He's inciting or instigating violence or terrorism in Southeast. That is the only evidence you have. Which other evidence do you have? Now, listen to this video I'm about to share now. If you are just joining us now, do well to subscribe to this YouTube channel. More updates, more news, more day-to-day activities regarding the war between the Biafran Liberation Army and the Zoo Army of Nigeria. Now listen.
But we have woken up to the responsibilities, ensuring that asymmetric warfare needs all of society approach. It's not only military. It is having to do with the kinetic and the non-kinetic working hand in hand to ensure that we succeed, and that's where we're going. So where we are now, we're a lot better than we used to be. Last year when we took over, this year, a lot of improvement. A lot of work still going on, and we'll continue to do that.
You say you've woken up to the challenges, but it's taken 15 years to wake up. Why so long?
Like I said, asymmetric warfare is the difficult kind of warfare. I think our advice to any country, don't allow it to start. It's difficult to eradicate because you're dealing with people that have a sense of belonging, believing what they're doing is right, ideology. You don't see it on their foreheads. You don't know who they are. And they're just like normal human beings, and because you have to respect human rights, you have to take up the laws of war. It makes it a bit more difficult because identifying who the enemy is unlike the conventional type. You see him, you know he's wearing a kind of, these ones are not, and they are your own people from within. We've been in Liberia, we've been in Sierra Leone, we've fought other countries, we've restored peace, and so it's always a surprise that we're still having it, but it shows you the difficulty. Most times when we have issues, when to strike, They are embedded with civilians. So we have to call off the strike.
Well, I want to ask you about that because you say what's made this challenging is that you have to stick to the laws of war. I want to question you on some of the ways in which this counterinsurgency has been fought, including accusations made by Human Rights Watch that says the Nigerian Air Force carried out what they describe as erroneous airstrikes on targets in Kaduna State, that's in the north of Nigeria, this September, killing 24 people, injuring many more. It follows what they say is an apparent catalogue of mishaps that have killed hundreds of civilians since 2017, including a strike on a religious celebration in Kaduna State that killed 85. Firstly, how do you explain these allegations of what appear, at least to Human Rights Watch, to be devastating failures on behalf of the Air Force?
Well, I know that we all understand that we're human beings. We're bound to make mistakes, and they're just professional mistakes. Some things are beyond your control. We don't control the weather. We don't control the atmosphere. So even when you have it right, mistakes do come in. And when it happens, we take responsibilities and we make amends. Fighting a warfare for over 15 years and making how many? Human lives are lost. We're really very sorry about that. But then the war goes on and we have to stop because if you look at it, we're not the only ones. Not blaming anyone, but any country that is fighting a prolonged war, they are bound to be mistakes, but they are never deliberate, and we take ownership and we take correction. So that's what we're doing.
What about justice, accountability, compensation?
All correct. We have standing court martials for people who have committed offenses, and then we make amends for the communities. Like the Tulumbiri community that had issues, the government stepped in. A lot of incentives have been put in place. Measures have been put in place. We have also corrected enhanced our training. We have suspended the commanders that were on ground. We've taken them responsibility for what they have done, and so the work is ongoing.
Are all operational protocols being fulfilled
accurately? Nigerian Armed Forces is a professional armed forces. We can attest to that everywhere we went to. We have done so well in other countries. We're doing the same thing in Nigeria.
You've described what sounds almost like something resembling a purge of inadequate elements within the Nigerian armed forces. Has a purge gone? And has a purge been underway in recent years?
Not purge per se. What we do is that whoever commits an offense faces the law. Is being prosecuted. He will be investigated. If found culpable, he faces the law. We have standing court martials in all our divisions. You do well, you are rewarded, and then you do badly, you face the law.
So you're losing people, but what about recruitment? Are people attracted to the Nigerian armed forces? Are you able to fill battalions and ranks of soldiers?
Yes, we're doing. Presently, as we speak, I was at Depot, Nigerian Army, where we train recruits. We just graduated about 5,800. For the officers corps, for the Nigerian Defense Academy, we just graduated almost 800 officers, young officers, back into the system. So it's ongoing, and yearly we have people going on retirement when it's their time to leave. So the armed forces is working well. We continue. Where we have a lot of challenges because we don't produce the equipment that we use, and sometimes it's been a bit difficult getting equipment, even when we have the money.
We'll talk about procurement in a minute, but I'm curious about something that you said a little bit earlier in our interview, that amongst many of the challenges are the fact that the enemy is embedded within communities.
Correct.
And they look like us, which leads to all sorts of complications when it comes to successfully mounting this counterinsurgency. But according to some sources, abuses have been carried out by the military. Let me draw attention to the long list of allegations that have overshadowed your battle with Boko Haram and ISIL in West Africa. Many of those allegations were raised by Amnesty International that say at least 10,000 people, including children, have died in military detention, many of them innocent civilians who were fleeing Boko Haram, hoping for safety and security in the hands of the military, but instead experience alleged brutality at the hands of your forces. Did your military abuse Boko Haram survivors?
Not at all. It's not in our character. We don't do such. It's not in our DNA to do such a thing. And, I've had this allegation severally. It's just a reminder. I was a theater commander in the Northeast. I left there January 2023. There was this allegation by Reuters that on abortions. Initially, they said 13,000. Later on, they said 10,000. And I requested, then the Chief of Defense Staff, General Irabo, I requested that we invite Human Rights Committee to set up an independent investigating committee to investigate that allegation, because we're tired of these allegations. I mean, they come in, and the funny thing is that they always come in when we are succeeding. So the question is why? What is the intent? So he got to Human Rights. An investigative team was commissioned. I testified with so many other officers. They were given unfettered freedom to go around. They investigated for 1 year, 6 months. I think just last month, they released the report. And guess what? Nothing of such, because we told them that whatever allegation anybody is saying about abortion, it's not us. Maybe it's another country they're thinking about, not Nigeria. And so they came out. But the funny thing is that when they were reading the reports out, these other organizations refused to even show up.
Just to remind our viewers, you're talking about the allegations.
The allegation for the
first
abortion,
yes, by the Reuters news.
That was about 3 weeks ago, and then suddenly last week, Amnesty came out with 10,000. So I don't know what the joy is about 10,000 issues.
Okay,
it is not in our character. We don't do such. We will never, ever do such a thing.
Understood. So you would allow Al Jazeera journalists, international investigators into, for instance, the Giwa barracks in the northeastern city of Maiduguri that has been allegedly holding children as young as 5 in hot, cramped conditions, not to mention allegations of beating, the sexual abuse of women and girls, where innocent civilians were meant to be in your care, treated this way. I mean, that's the big question Amnesty International raises. And they're prepared, sorry to interrupt, they're prepared to take you to the International Court of Justice to defend their views. Would you testify there?
We're ready to go. We're not scared of anybody. And I can tell you, they have their own intent on why they are doing that. I think they just want to demoralize my troops. They want us to look bad, because I just can't understand why anybody will wake up and say that we're killing people when we're actually not doing the same. And guess what? Where the Giwa barracks we were talking about, we have all the humanitarian agencies working there. You have the UN working, local and international organizations are working. Are we saying they are complicit? There is nothing we're doing in the back. So if they don't say it, which means Amnesty International is equal, and Amnesty is equally there, so which means they're equally accusing all these other organizations of being complicit.
So just to be clear, you would be prepared to go to the ICJ in The Hague and answer these accusations?
We're not complicit.
So just to be clear, you would be prepared to go to the ICJ in The Hague and answer these accusations?
We're not scared of anything, because we don't have anything of such.
I want to address allegations also of corruption in the defence sector, because Transparency International says corruption has resulted in the wasting of billions of dollars worth of public funds through corrupt defence procurement. You said yourself, procurement's an issue for the Nigerian military. Is the Nigerian armed forces corrupt?
We are not. We're just a few good guys trying to do some job, but some people are just hell-bent on making sure that we don't succeed. We don't produce the equipment we need. It takes two to tangle. So if they're saying there's corruption, which means those producing the equipment are equally corrupt, because it takes somebody to give and somebody to collect. So which means those ones having these weapons are equally guilty. We don't do such. We have a procurement procedure which is being followed. And to also state that even with our monies at times, we find it difficult getting equipment. And the question is why? One of the reasons why this insurgency has been for this long is because we have been denied access to equipment. Even when we have our monies to get to, it's difficult.
Why have you been denied access to equipment?
Well, I really don't understand. It's a question that we keep on asking, why are we being denied?
So this is a political decision you're suggesting?
Political decision.
I mentioned corruption because instead of being used for legitimate purchases, this is the words of a court in Jersey, for international viewers, that is a British offshore tax haven, recently processed a case suggesting that as much as $8.9 million of funds were moved out of Nigeria into a bank account in this offshore haven of Jersey, funds that, according to the verdict of court in Jersey in January, were, quote, illicitly obtained by Nigerian officials back in 2014. I appreciate that is some time ago, but I ask you again, does the Nigerian armed forces have an issue with corruption? Because according to this court verdict, it does.
Well, 2014. This is 2024. I'm the Chief of Defense Staff now. We don't have such allegations. If they have the facts, I'm sure they will be able to bring out who are those. I mean, anything you travel electronically is captured. So it's not anything hidden. If they have those facts, bring it out. But you see, what we don't want is somebody sitting down somewhere and just assuming that things are happening when they are not. And that's one of the reasons why I came here, and I had the privilege of being here with Al Jazeera, and I want to say a big thank you. It's an opportunity to also present our countries. That place, people should understand that we're fighting a war. We need everybody to put hands together. Let us succeed. And the asymmetric warfare we're dealing with is not only to Nigeria alone. West Africa, the Sahelian area. And in fact, if actions are not taken, it's going to engulf the entire world.
You mentioned a few good guys are trying to do a good job. when I talked about corruption.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
We're just good guys just trying to make sure that our country is secured. And then some individuals seem to not to be happy about it and trying everything possible to throw us under the bus for whatever reasons. Like I told you, what I realized over time, I've been in service for almost 33 years. Anytime we seem to be succeeding, somebody throws something at us. And the question is, why? Is it because we're succeeding or you don't want the country to move forward? What is the aim? What's the intent? That's the question we're asking.
You seem to be posing those questions not to me, not necessarily to our viewers, but to people in government. What do you want to say to them directly? You seem to suggest that they're holding you back.
Not our own government particularly. Our government are doing the best they can. But, you know, there's an international system. Like I said, we don't produce, we need to buy. So going to buy sometimes is a bit difficult, getting these items.
And who are your security partners in the region? Am I right in thinking Nigeria does not have any foreign bases on its soil?
Not at all. We do not encourage any foreign base. We have the capacity to secure our country, to secure the sub-region, and to assist Africa. We have that capacity. All we need is to continue to do joint training, which we do, get equipments that we need to help us project these wars.
If you're playing this almighty game of catch-up to deal with a type of warfare that you have never dealt with before, asymmetric warfare on this scale, you most certainly need partners. Given the wave of coups that we've seen across the Sahel region, military juntas being established, the influence of Russian forces, particularly Wagner mercenaries in these countries growing by the minute, who are your allies to shoulder support in the region?
Well, for now, Nigeria is standing on its own, and you know Nigeria is a non-aligned country, which means we have freedom to operate with any other region, any other bloc together. And what we are doing is that we're still conducting this for training. For training purposes, we have our officers and soldiers training all over the countries. All our friendly partners, we are together with them, we're working. All we're saying is that we don't need anybody, any boots on ground. We continue with our joint training, we'll continue with our joint courses. All we need is the ability to get these equipments that we will, and I will show you that we can secure our own area.
Why are you so resistant to boots on the ground from friendly nations?
Because it creates more problems.
In what way?
In what way? I mean, you imagine you bring country X into your country. The next thing is, you know, most of the other terrorists will also want to come because they have grounds against them. We don't want Nigeria or Africa or West Africa to be turned into a proxy war, because that's what will be the next thing. Once you allow one comes in, the other one goes the other way. And before you know it, there's conflict. We want West Africa to be peaceful.
What about international forces outside West Africa, outside Africa?
Nobody. We're good to go. We're good to go. All we're doing is, as we speak, we still have our troops maintaining peace within Africa on United Nations mission. We still have them.
General, are we going to be sitting here in...
We should be done with. We're heading there.
What does success look like for you when it comes to the fight against ISIL in West Africa and Boko Haram?
Success, well, in life, you know, there is never a situation where you have peace 100%. Nowhere. It doesn't happen. Not in any country. But what we see for us, success is when Nigerians can sleep peacefully, can go to work, children can go to school, hospitals will operate, markets will operate back to how Nigeria used to be.
In the time that we have left, I'd like to talk about some of the concerns about regional security. I mentioned already these multiple coups that we've seen all the way from the Atlantic on the west coast, all the way to the Red Sea on the east coast. How do you explain that, and what security implications does that have for you and your army?
It's concerning for us that we're having those that have taken over unconstitutionally. In Nigeria, you know, we've had our own history of coups, and that's passed. Nigeria presently, nobody's interested in coups. Democracy will thrive better in a democratic environment, and that's what we'll continue to do. So we will there to protect democracy. For the countries that have carried out coups, we're still discussing with them. Just recently, we finished the African military games. Mali, Burkina Faso attended. Libya was there. Niger, Chad couldn't attend, but they gave us intention the way they wanted to come. And we're working together militarily because we know the challenges we're facing need all of us working together, because the enemy does not respect borders. So that's why it's important, it's critical. But for coups, we try to encourage them to return back to democracy. You know, the issue we had with Niger, people thought it was Nigeria against Niger. Nigeria doesn't have any issue with Niger. We share a border of 1,500 kilometers, 7 Nigerian states. We have cultural, religious affinities together with them, so we cannot afford to be enemies.
How committed is Niger to your north in sharing the fight against Boko Haram?
No, they're very committed because they equally know that we need to, together we are stronger. If you are alone, you will be exposed.
This is even in the wake of a substantial amount of Russian mercenaries